Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest today is James Maddison, CMO at blockchain.com. And this is one of those stories where the path to the top doesn't exactly follow the neat little roadmap career counselors hand you in school. James has worn a lot of hats along the way: journalism, entrepreneurship, brand building, marketing leadership, and somewhere in there figuring out how to connect storytelling with growth in industries that move fast and rarely come with an instruction manual. Now, before blockchain.com, he helped shape growth and marketing at TradingView and played a key role at Resi. Hope I said that right. He'll tell me. As the company expanded its presence in a crowded market. Now he's leading global marketing at blockchain.com, operating at the intersection of finance, technology, culture, and consumer trust. And if you've spent any time around crypto, you know that isn't exactly marketing on easy mode by any means. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my friend. We had some very intriguing off-air conversations, to say the least, and I cannot wait. There's so much to cover. Okay, your path to becoming a CMO wasn't exactly those, textbook. Here's the 6 steps you take, and then at the end, you got your title, right? We're talking journalism, entrepreneurship, marketing, different industry. When you look back, that brought you here. What do you think those experiences, like what experience helped shape you the most? What do you look back on and go, okay, that all made sense now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a few moments I look back that kind of guided me towards ultimately where I am now. I originally didn't know anything about marketing. I wasn't interested in marketing. I actually wanted to be a war correspondent. That's what I went to college for. I was like, I'm going to be a war correspondent. I'm going to document all of this sort of goings on in the world and, sort of put truth to power. And then my mom got a bit scared about that. And I kind of pivoted into, okay, well, maybe I won't go to war zones, but I'll still go to adventurous places. And I left college and I had a small gig writing for a rock climbing magazine. And it was like $400 a month, which is what I was looking on. It was so little. But it afforded me this ability to go and travel, and I evolved into essentially wanting to become a professional explorer. I thought I could make a living doing adventurous trips to remote parts of the world, mainly around Central Asia, and then writing about it, making documentaries, making TV shows, a bit like a Bear Grylls character. And yeah, so I did that. I did that for 7-8 years. And ultimately, as a result of doing that, I founded an adventure print publication, or co-founded it. And then one of those investors was like, hey, we have this great idea where we can use adventurers to essentially market products. And we'll do big trips up Everest. And then we'll make sure we have all the best tech so they can film it, and we'll make news events and therefore we'll get a ton of coverage. Would you like to be a wingman to these adventurers? Because you kind of know the space. And ultimately that brought me to London here in the UK. And and then it set me into a marketing journey. That specific gig didn't last that long, but I kind of fell into more from there, and finance, and then ultimately where I am. But those early experiences would have very much shaped my style of being a CMO today.
Yeah. So, and I know this, of course, like you do, journalism teaches you to kind of ask questions and get comfortable being curious, right? How much would you say of the journalist in James still shows up today in your current?
Very good question. I think the journalist that still shows up today is very much focused around what is the hook? What is the angle? Now, with journalism, you're doing it about what is the story? What is the angle that gets someone to read this, which is about the truth? Marketing is what is the hook that gets people to buy the products? They're not too far away in terms of you still need to get that interest. So you still need to be able to compose the story. And then on a more tactical ground, being able to copyright and spend and writing from a very early age, and then being able to play with language and know those differences and how that can show up in different forms is a really, I find it a very useful asset in my day-to-day work and a work here at Blockchain, because it just means that you can craft those words, those sentences, that ad copy so much more tightly than, you're someone who's not related to the business that you've hired in as a freelancer, for example.
Yeah, I find I do the same thing, with my journalism background and then in marketing, and it's just a different point of view we have, right? How you look at things, especially like a storytelling arc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the storytelling arc, like understanding the thing that's going to pull people in, but then understanding of the characters and the different factors at play and what someone's objection might be, and then countering that objection. Because you're building, I think journalism when it's at its best is making it is presenting the facts in a way that causes a light bulb to go on in the reader's mind. And that's it's quite a harmony of different things, like a bit of like a quote from somebody, a stat here, a stat there. You're stacking information together to make an overall piece. And marketing is the same way, just you're not maybe stacking quotes, you're stacking like, okay, this visual with this data point about trust and this data point about, and you can go down like a website page, for example. And although the components are different, like you might be looking at UX and not text, you're still doing the same thing, which is you're crafting a whole piece, which is sending a specific message.
Right. I want to get into risk taking with you. And I think you're very uniquely qualified to talk about, especially when I hear war correspondent. You are the first one, by the way, in the history of this show, and probably the history of all the thousands of interviews I've done. So congratulations.
Thank you.
What would you say is the biggest professional risk you've taken, where you're thinking this could be incredible, or I might be updating my LinkedIn tonight?
The biggest risk I've taken, there's two risks that are pretty much on par with one another. One was rebranding TradingView, and the other was doing a big brand update at Blockchain here. Brand revamps and rebrands are so dangerous, right? Like we've seen all the stuff in the news, and companies have got it wrong, and then there's consumer backlash, and everybody hates on it, and then all of a sudden, you're pushed out. So in terms of like professional risk, certainly those two. Like I think you have to establish a hell of a lot of trust very quickly with your, with the CEOs, with the leadership team, multiple teams actually across the entire org, who all have a view or have some feeling about the brand because they've been working on it, right? Like I've been, I'm potentially lucky or unlucky, I'm not sure, but coming in at a point, and then one of the first things I do is update the brand, is one of the things the textbooks say don't do, right? You should get to know the company and all this sort of stuff. And you're fortunate that you don't have any of the baggage of having created stuff, but at the same time, you're working with people who have created that work and have spent years with it, and et cetera. So you have to be very sensitive with understanding what people want and may have not been able to articulate, and then being able to translate that into a design. And then if you can do that, then people feel a lot more bought in. But if you get that process wrong, then you're out.
Yeah. From in your current role in a leadership position, is that something you talk to your team about? Like, I want you to take risks. Come to me with ideas like that.
Yeah, absolutely. With my team, I do a lot of, I guess we do way more stakeholder management than any actual like technical skill training or anything like that. Because I think the best way for a marketer is like, I tell my team a marketer is like a concierge at a very expensive hotel. You get asked a lot of different requests from a lot of different guests, let's say, who all want things to a very high standard, and they don't want to hear how much of an issue it is. And the best way to affect change within an organization is to actually act like one of those top concierge at a hotel, which is that you do have an idea of what you can and can't do, and what the limits are, and what's going to be good for your bottom line performance. The goal is to answer people. In what I tell the team is like the goal is to answer people's requests, but then do that sort of improv and then bend it round so that they're helping to also shape the narrative in the way that's going to be the most effective for the marketing department. But that is definitely that requires a level of risk taking. You can't say yes to every single, every bad idea. It would go really wrong. So you have to say yes, but also move it round and position it in ways and take it and roll with it and go, oh, I think you meant this, and that can backfire. But that's the thing that you need to learn. If you learn the stakeholder management as a team, then that's how you can get the most change out of an organization.
Do you think AI is having an effect more or less on whether people are more or less risk averse?
I think AI is has a polarizing effect on both ends of the spectrum. On the one end of the spectrum, you have people who don't adopt it and don't trust it and don't default to it. And those individuals run the risk of having lower productivity. Now, there is, because in the day-to-day work, there's many things that don't require a full team member's brain power. It's just a task that has to be done. And in those situations, AI is very, very useful. It's also very, very useful for upskilling the individuals involved. Like, okay, I need to learn how to shoot a film camera from the 1980s because that's the best way to get decent film photography, like decent photographic assets. It's the most cost effective to the output. Okay, how do I actually shoot a film camera? And AI is really good because you can keep on taking photos and working through it. And then all of a sudden you've got people who have upskilled themselves to do very good work. So if you're shunning AI, you miss out on those opportunities. But likewise, if you embrace AI too fully, you kind of go down slop alley, which is like, right, it's made a website, it's made a web page for me. That looks pretty cool. Doesn't matter that it looks the same as like 100 other examples on Twitter, because that's literally the way that it's going, which is like, this is the default design style of Claude Design, for example. That is, so you have to have an ability to know when to pull back and not take the suggestions. So for me and for the team, like anything that is like very publicly facing, like no AI copywriting, for example. And if it's very publicly facing, no AI design has to be done manually. But the aim is to do all the other bits that are less visible with it, but still have to be done. Do that with AI so that you've got enough time to now invest in the hero assets.
I know, like early in your career, there's a lot of value in doing everything yourself, right? And I think we all go through that. And then eventually you move, at least you did, from being the person executing to leading teams and building systems, right? So how do you recommend, or how did you navigate that transition from doing everything yourself to now leading teams and building systems?
Well, I think I still do everything myself, to be honest, in the sense that I am building systems and I have building teams, but I've still important copywriting. I copyright, I do the design, I do the photographic, I do the video editing, I do the color grading. Like there is a full realm, like the full realm of production, like is something that I invest in. If I don't know it, I try and learn it so that I'm capable of doing as many different things as possible. I think and then the goal is you can then, from a position of knowledge, you can then educate team members up. And of course, there's always going to be specialisms that you don't know. Like I'm not a performance specialist, for example. So like we have a performance specialist in-house who has a greater breadth of knowledge than I do in that area. But the ambition with and what we're doing at blockchain.com is that we're moving, especially in this fast evolving tech world and where we're getting with LLMs and all of that, is that we're moving to a world where we have smaller teams who are more capable across the board. It's if you can do many things yourself, then and you've got support, whether that's from an LLM or whether that's from a few team members aided by LLMs, then you can, the more that you can do, or the more that each individual person can do, the less you have to have a meeting to say, hey, can we do this? How would I do this? Okay, here's the brief. I've written the brief. Okay, now I'm going to internalize the brief. Okay, now I'm going to go with this freelancer or whoever is going to go make the asset. Now that asset isn't like my vision, so we got to have another meeting about why it's not like my vision and why it's not going to work. And then they got to do revisions, and you can cut out like 4 or 5 hours of back and forth if you just know the skill set. So what I'm trying to get to with the teams is these people who are genuinely capable of being able to craft great copy, have an eye for design, know about like product experience and UX. And know about distribution channels. Because if you know how to make all of that, if you know how to put words on a page and promote a product in the best light and make sure that those flows are, there's not something really silly, like there's no call to act, there's no button to click on the next stage of the process. If you can do all that, you're very far along the way of being able to move very quickly, which is obviously something that we're very focused on in the crypto tech finance industry. It's blockchain. We want to be at the forefront of all of this new developments, and this is kind of how this is rolling out in the marketing department at the moment.
So you mentioned the rebrand. Anybody who's been through one can commiserate, can relate.
Yep.
It is a Herculean task. What are some things you learned or surprised you about the process?
I think the thing that surprised me about the process is how willing people can be to take risks, especially like if you look at blockchain. The last rebrand that I did, like Peter Smith has been the co-founder for 13 years. Like Lane, the other co-CEO, has been here, like involved with the company for 8 or 9 years. They've been around the company for a very long time, and they put the trust in me very early on, within 5 months, to completely change what they'd held on to for years. And I think that's always surprising. Like, I think if you can give good rationale, and this happened very similar in TradingView, it was very early into my tenure at TradingView. If you can give good rationale as to why you think a brand update is necessary, and it's not always necessary, and you can speak about it articulately, and you can show the vision of what it could be and what you sense is there, I think people are quite forgiving if you make errors along the way. They'll put you back on the path. But that was definitely the surprise. I thought it was a one-off at TradingView, and then I did it at blockchain. I was like, okay, right. Like if you've got the guts to have the vision, people can back you, so long as you make your case clear.
I remember early in my career, I was at an ad agency, and we were doing a rebrand. It was a small company, but it didn't matter in the sense of when you peel back the onion and you start realizing just how many different things are affected by a rebrand.
Mm.
Right. I mean, like an email signature on a pen, there's so many different things that I think the general public, and I guess nor should they, need to understand, but we as marketers do.
Yeah, there is so much, and there's always so much. I think the thing that I tell the team is that the consumer doesn't really notice. Like, the consumer will notice your main assets. They'll notice your profile picture change. They'll notice if your homepages change. They'll notice if your app logo changes a hell of a lot. Your app logo, people really notice when that goes different. But they're not going to know or care that much if your about page is not updated at the same time as your homepage. So generally, the philosophy is to make sure you spend all due care and attention on the assets that are going to be seen, and then waterfall out as you can to the other areas that haven't been done yet. Don't try and make everything happen at the same time. If there's an old logo running at the same time on a somewhat important page or on some merch, like it's not the end of the world. It's okay, and that frees you up a lot more to not have everything perfect.
Right. Exactly. There's a challenge of marketing financial products, right? And it feels different because you're not just selling features or benefits. You're really asking people to trust you with something that's deeply personal, right? Talk to us, how challenging is that balancing act? When you market a financial product, right, it feels different because you're not just selling features or benefits. You're asking people to trust you with something that's deeply personal, right? Yeah. And there's that balance. How do you manage that balance?
I think that marketing financial products is one of the hardest jobs you can do as a marketer, because marketing finance is not like marketing consumer goods or anything which has got its own visual, like physical identity. Anything that's a physical product, half the battle is, there is a lot of distribution tactics. There's a load of really like tricky bits to work out, but like you have a great product that you can put in situations. Whereas something like crypto, or more broadly money, it's a kind of abstract concept. So how do you bring that to life in a way that gives you the trust without going to, oh, we're a trusted brand? And you'll see that so many financial brands, whether they're older banks or whether they're newer fintechs, they default to, you can trust us, because trust and freedom for the world is like the two things that fintech companies try and promise. And those messages are really important. Like financial freedom is a really, and it's our mission as well. It's a very important goal, and security is a very important facet. But you can't just say, "Hey, trust me. Hey, we're going to make you more free," because that's that's saying like I'm funny. Like you kind of have, the proof has to be in the pudding. So a lot of what you have to do is find ways to create a feeling of not only like that this is a secure and reputable company, but this is a different company. This is a company that has something else to say. Blockchain, what we do is we try and speak to the user wherever they are. So we've run some advertising campaigns recently. We ran a big advertising campaign in LA. We've run a large one in the UK. And one in Dallas as well. And we got a few more planned. Each one of those campaigns, was individually customized to the location that it was in. Now, to some extremes, like the copy on the billboards on Santa Monica Pier was different from like on Hollywood Boulevard because the user was in a different, like the viewer was in a different location. So what we're trying to do is say like, hey, we understand you personally. And as a result of that, this is why you can trust us, because we understand you. So that intense level of localization is one example of how like you can take something that's got an abstract concept, like cryptocurrency or money, and you start to build in distinctive assets that speak to your user group specifically.
So people, we all know, there's an emotional quotient here with money, right? We have an emotional relationship with money. It's fear, security, status, whatever the case may be. But how much does psychology end up influencing, if all, in your marketing decisions?
That's interesting. I think psychology plays a huge part in the overall brand identity that I'm creating, which is that we want to have, we prioritize super fans over like just people being ambiently aware of blockchain.com. And trying to speak to a very specific audience. So you have to understand what's important to that audience. Now, in crypto, it's predominantly male. It's up to 90% plus in some instances, in some countries, male. They're around, the ones who have funds are 35 to 55, going on a little bit older. You have a very clear demographic of users and who they are, and you can make some logical assumptions about the sort of, and you also know that they're investing in cryptocurrency. So you've got enough data points to know that actually there are certain types of messaging, such as the more libertarian freedom messaging associated with crypto and being like the master of your own destiny, like that comes across in our creative more than other routes that we could do, because we believe that will be most attractive to the psychological profile of our consumers. What we don't do so much is like lots and lots and lots and lots of customer research. Some people are very, very customer research orientated as marketers. I would say that I'm not so much. I see you can very easily get led into non-cohesive decision-making based on the latest round of customer profiles. And that's not to say that we don't look at data. We do, like we look at and see what's working and what's not, but we try not to we try to keep a clear vision of where we want to go and where we believe it's going to be best reflective in the customer psychology.
It makes sense. So you touched on briefly about the billboard campaign in the US and the UK, but I want my audience to hear more about that, because it's just incredible. And I want to hear about the thinking behind it, how it's doing, how long it's going to run. Tell us, about this campaign.
Sure. So we had two main campaigns running at roughly the same time. The LA campaign is just finished and we're just waiting on the results. So we should have some more on shortly. And the UK is going to be running for 9 months. So we won't know for a little while the efficacy there. The LA campaign. So basically, actually, let's start the macro view on the marketing strategy, advertising strategy is it's a year of red. We changed the red color, which is distinctive. There's no other major red cryptocurrency brand, and there's very few financial brands. They're more likely blue, etc. So we're claiming a distinctive asset for ourselves, one that's quite bold and full of energy and sort of reflects this zeitgeist of more risk-taking today than, let's say, there was in the past. So red is the dominant color. And then on each of these billboards, there is a different just copywriting, and then the blockchain logo, and then a sign off. So in LA, we have a long running campaign in America, which is Invest Like an Icon. This is perfect for LA because it's about, everyone wants to be a Hollywood icon. And what I did was we took like slogans or sayings or things that might be related to LA culture, Hollywood culture, and sort of subvert them slightly to make a point that we're making. So one of the ones that was up on Sunset Boulevard was, you'll never work in this town again. Like blockchain Invest Like an Icon, which is taking that sort of negative like Hollywood producers saying like you're out of this city, and then saying, well, you're never going to need to work in this town again because crypto is great. Like you've taken control of your financial freedom. That's like the more kind of slightly more highbrow humor, I guess. But then we were like a whole range through to, we had a roadblock that we needed to use, and it was just before, which is basically all the inventory that we had, which is some of the biggest in the US. We had the opportunity with our media buyer to essentially turn it on for, I think it was 2 or 3 hours straight, and there'd be no other ads shown. It would just be this, and it was just before Coachella. And we're like, well, what are we going to put on that is that is going to be seen? Because most billboards is not seen. It's not as like people pass by it. So it was like, I was coming up with all these kind of clever things, and I was just like, all right, we'll just put your mom on the billboard as big as we can, the biggest billboard. This is like the size of a city block almost, like, and it just says your mom, and then small, invest in crypto. Like, maybe you should too, like blockchain.com. And I had to like drop that a few places internally just to see if I was going to get in trouble if I just went ahead and did it. But yeah, no, my bosses are great, and they said, "Go for it, absolutely go for it."
Love.
And so we did it, and that was just like, those are the things that we try and do, as well as the localization. So like the Santa Monica Pier, or the Santa Monica in general, like there'd be things like the name of a restaurant, and we'd make a pun on the restaurant, so you could see the ad in relation to it. When you're only using text and a red background, you can do many, many different things. So like very individual customization is super easy to do. And it's the sort of thing that elevates the campaigns from being passed by to actually being noticed. And then you get the brand awareness, which is what we're trying to get at the moment. Is very much a brand awareness campaign.
The copywriter in me is just, I'm loving this campaign. I'd love that you'll never work in this town again. It's so, the double entendre is just so good.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably like the British roots coming up, and I have to my boss Lane is always like, right, like, yeah, you got to balance it out, mate. Like you just gotta bring it back down, because sometimes it doesn't work in every place, and so right. But yeah, it's good when it works. It really works.
Oh, it's marketing 101. It's like, know your audience, and you're in LA, you're in Hollywood. So, but speaking of that, it's a good segue to this last topic I want to talk to you about. And you've used this idea of the CMO as the film director, right?
Yeah.
And I love it, because I started picturing marketing as a movie set. So unpack that whole idea for us about the CMO as the film director.
Well, if you think about a film director and you think about films, now there's different ways to shoot it, of course, but like the traditional kind of auteur film director, the ones that we kind of know and the names that we recognize, they have a very specific view for what they want to achieve out of essentially a story that's been packaged up and being sold. And whether that's like Steven Spielberg, or whether that's J.J. Abrams, or whoever you want, they will work with every department. They'll work with the producers, which obviously, they have to get people on board. If it's their film, they have to get people on board. But you have to get them on board. You have to manage up. You have to manage to your costume designers, your cinematographer, your art director, etc. And all of that comes through to this single point, which is the director. And the director, especially when they're at their most powerful, has a say of how everything fits together in a cohesive view to make a cohesive story. I think that like marketing and the way that I operate is very much like that, is that I have a vision of what I want the company to look like, act like, behave like, that I believe will drive the most effective results for us. And so I try to retain as much visibility across as many areas as possible. And I try to do as much as I can myself, aided by my team, to bring that to life, because you're making the set, if you have one person who's got the idea of what it is and how that brand identity can come out, it all fits together. It doesn't feel like your social posts are completely different from your advertising, which are completely different from your product experience. Like, it doesn't feel like that, with some of our competitors, let's say, like, okay, it's a new advertising season, so we're going to hire a new agency. And now that the brand messaging is completely different from how it was before and the look and feel, it's like there isn't a through line. Whereas investing that power in one or one or two, you can get away with a select group of empowered individuals. You create a vision and a product over a timeline, which is what is most important, because you need that longevity for the consumers to see it, understand it, get it, like it, and ultimately keep buying with you.
So I would assume, to play out this analogy, the CEO is kind of the head of the studio, right?
Yeah. Well,
or the CFO.
You can play it however you like. There are different orgs. I've worked with ones where the CEO is definitely like the director and you're just like the assistant director. And then there are other ones which are very much more, like they're the executive producer who backs your vision and is more standoff, but ultimately wants results. Or they're the head of the studio, and like, if you're not going to do it, you get fired. Like, all of these are kind of true and not true depending on who you are. Like, I think you're not making a vanity project. You're not making art. You're ultimately making something in the service of business growth. So you have to be accountable to higher ups in that regard. But marketing at its finest is when you have people, in my view, is when you have people who are empowered and know what they want to see and are given the tools to do that and given the freedom to go and do that. But they ultimately know that they still have to be accountable to bottom line growth at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to end this. James Maddison, CMO of blockchain.com. Thank you for being a guest on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.